Hello and welcome to Geek It Plays Epic Landscape Tutorials. This is episode number 8 of the series, and it is entitled Snow Valley. And we're going to begin by creating our background. So let's zoom out so we can see our workspace. And this is the area we're going to be focusing on right through here. So let's create a normal terrain and let's resize it. And what we want to do is just stretch this terrain all the way across the back side of our screen. So check your main camera view and make sure that it's stretched all the way across. Okay, right click and edit object, and you can right click and drag to view what we have, but I think we're going to reset and start with a clean slate. Now let's go up and add a function, and we're going to right click on this function and reset the function so we can start fresh with this as well. Let's double click it, and under collections it has some really nice terrain altitudes, and we're going to choose the mountain range and click OK. Let's set the scale to 20 and our amplitude to 50 and click OK, and you can see that we already have a very interesting terrain started here. But there's one thing we forgot to do before that, so let's hit reset, and then let's set the resolution and size to 1024 by 1024. And we might even want to increase it a little bit higher, but this is okay for now. Let's edit the function, and we preset it before, so click OK. And it's going to take longer because we increased the size quite a bit. We're just going to wait for that to generate our terrain. So you can see how that changes our terrain quite a bit. Let's click OK. And the next thing I want to do with this terrain is just reposition it and make it a little bit different shape. Let's go to our numeric terrain tab, and let's use the twist tool. And we're just going to click on this arrow, the Y-X axis, and we're just going to drag it to the right. And you notice what that's doing to our terrain. Okay, and let's set that at about 24. Next, tilt the terrain forward and position it in front of the camera. Maybe a little bit more tilt. Okay. And resize it a little bit bigger, and I'm going to move it up just like this, and this is what we want it to look like. Okay, let's go ahead and go to Render Options and click Render to Screen. Let's choose a user-defined aspect ratio and change it to, let's say, 440 by 240, and that'll give us a more panoramic view. And let's click on the main camera, and on the main camera, let's set the focal to 55mm. And let's go to our camera and reposition it. We want it a little bit farther away to give us a panoramic view. We need to change our terrain a little bit and just adjust it a little bit flatter. Set it down on the ground. Okay? So let's preview that, and this is going to be our backdrop. And we may add a few mountains in the back of this. Okay? Let's create another terrain, and we're going to put it in the front. So click on your terrain and expand it out. I'm just going to try some different sizes until we see what we want to in the main camera view here. Something like that. Okay. Let's right click and edit object, and we're going to do some of the same things. Let's double the size just once and go to our function, and let's add the same thing. Okay, I like that. We're going to use that. Let's click OK. And we're going to just slightly tilt this one. Let's just adjust it so it covers the entire front here. Preview. And so here we have our foreground, and it has very interesting shapes already. Okay, one thing before we start editing and putting in other stuff, let's apply some coloring. So let's go to our first terrain and open this and choose mixed materials. And let's set the colors, enable the distribution of materials, and set the influence of slope to 0. Also, we'd like to set the two materials at low altitudes. Next, click on Materials to Mix, and let's adjust the mixing proportions, and you can see how the two materials are going to be mixed according to the colors. And for this, we're going to need to adjust it ever so slightly so we can get exactly what we need. So let's keep clicking on our thumbnail to have it update. That's close, so let's try 7.5. Oh, that's too much, so let's go back. Maybe let's go to 8. Okay, there we go. Let's preview that. And you can see how the materials are going to be mixed. I want to put some snow and trees down here in this green area, and then the rest will be mountains. But we don't want the ecosystem to be applied to the whole thing. Select your green material, create an ecosystem, and add plants. And let's use the bulky conifer, or you can also select the fir tree. Click OK, and populate and see what the default setting is. And our trees are too big amongst some other things, so let's increase the density, get rid of the decay, and decrease our overall scaling. Let's populate that. And that looks pretty good, so let's preview it. And you can see how the trees are just applied to the green areas. Okay, a couple of things though. Let's just decrease the density just a bit and enable shrink at low densities. Click on the color tab, and we want to do a couple of things. Let's enable the variable color and edit our function and add a noise node to the color. Okay, and double click here. We don't want to use any preset coloring, so let's right click and edit color map. And let's just change this a little bit lighter. A little darker here in the center. And so it has slight variations. Okay, let's populate that. And click OK. Our next step is to modify our materials. So let's select a material. And let's go to Landscapes and select Snow. Click OK. Next, choose our default, which is our mountains. And we're going to go right here and let's select the mountain snow. Okay. Let's preview what we have so far. And you can see that it's starting to look really nice. It looks like a faraway forest. We want to maybe take away some snow right here and show more rock. So let's adjust these mixing proportions so it just shows more of that rock. Let's go influence of environment and just adjust this a little bit. Okay, so here we have our background mountains, and if you zoomed into them you would be very impressed at the quality that you would still have. And I'll show you that in a minute. Okay, so let's select our foreground terrain and let's add a material to this. We can do the same things, but what we want to do is modify it just a bit. We're going to select our snow still, and let's preview how it's rendering this so far. And let's add some trees right here. So let's go to the snow and add an ecosystem and add plants, and we'll select the same tree, and let's actually add the fir tree as well. And that'll give us a little bit of diversity. We'll leave it the density and then scale them down a bit. And let's click on variable colors and add the noise, and we're just kind of doing the same things we did before. We'll edit our color map, make this side a little bit lighter and the center a little bit darker, and it will just make it look like the trees are carrying snow. Okay. Let's populate that and let's view that. And one thing we probably want to do is disable the decay. I forgot to do that before. And shrink at low densities. And it's taking a little bit longer to render, but you can already see how it's looking really nice. Let's increase on the scaling just a little bit. I'll make it look like they're a little bit closer to us. Increase the density and populate. Okay. Next, what I want to do is just make our trees look like they have more snow on them. So let's go to the Material tab and select our conifer tree. And let's open it. And we're just going to go to the color blend and then edit the color and go all the way to white. And then enable the color mask. And let's make it about 60%. Makes it a little wider looking. We're going to do the same things to the other tree. Okay, edit the color. Okay, and let's go to our fir tree. Now this is actually the trunk, we're going to leave that alone. But let's open the branches and let's do the same thing for the branches. And set it all the way to white and click OK. And you can see when we render this how it will make the trees look like they're carrying snow. Okay, next I would like to add another terrain right here. So let's go create a regular terrain. And we'll just increase the size and position it like this. We're going to edit the terrain. We're going to make it 512 by 512 and click OK. I'm going to raise it up a little bit, and let's go back to our numeric terrain and use the twist tool again and just click and drag it, and you can notice in the front view that it's actually twisting the terrain. Okay. Maybe a little bit taller here. And just position it just right. And if you'll notice down here in the main camera view, you can see that this terrain right here is going to create a lot more perspective and give it a lot more depth. Okay, so let's change the material to the same mountain snow, and let's click OK. And let's preview this now. It's taking a little bit longer to render. But here we have our very interesting snow valley with the fir trees and the conifer trees growing between the mountains. Okay, and we're going to kind of populate this last terrain that we've added. Now it will give us more perspective even still. Okay, so let's go and select our terrain. Click on snow and let's add an ecosystem and add plants. We'll add the fir tree and then we'll add the conifer tree. Okay, and populate. Let's increase the density, get rid of the decay, add the shrink at low densities and populate. And let's increase the density a little bit more. Let's preview. We might need to increase the size, but actually it looks good. I think the size is good now. Okay. We just have a few more things to do, so let's go back into our materials. And because we've added another terrain, we need to apply the same techniques to our materials as we did to the other terrains. So, that's the trunk. We don't need to do anything with that. We're just going to double check and make sure, yeah, this is looking good in this one. Okay, so we're done in this area. Next, we're going to work on our atmosphere. And what we have right now is just a basic atmosphere. Let's go to the atmosphere editor and look at how that looks a little bit. Another option is to use some preset atmospheres. And here is some example of those. I like to use a soft background light. Or you can make them from scratch. Okay, we're going to select the soft background for now, and we're going to just look and see what it looks like if we switch to volumetric model. Okay, and let's just adjust maybe the glow way down. And you notice in the thumbnail that it doesn't look as good, so let's go back and let's go to our atmosphere editor and let's add clouds. And let's add the breaking cumulus. And that's coming along nice. Let's go adjust our sky and fog and haze. Let's just increase the altitude and decrease the density a little bit. Makes it a little bit darker, and decrease the decay amount, and it'll give a more bluish hue to it. Decrease the glow intensity. Okay, we have a little bit more higher contrast and it's starting to look good. Let's increase the haze a little bit. You just have to adjust these ever so slightly. Let's go ahead and preview it. It's sometimes hard to see the details you're looking for in the thumbnail, so you should preview it every once in a while, and even though it takes a little bit longer to render. Even though it hasn't fully rendered yet, you can already see it's looking like a very nice wintry scene. And notice the trees here are giving it a nice perspective because of their different sizes. And there aren't too many clouds. It's still a nice sunny day. And looking at this scene, I think that it's very close to being rendered. You could add a little bit more trees down here or something, but for the most part it's a really nice scene. Okay. And at this point we're just going to do our final adjustments. Maybe increase the haze a bit. And let's change the haze colors so that our scene won't be so overwhelmingly blue. We're just going to make it a little bit more gray. Okay, that's looking better. It's looking better. Let's increase the ground fog. Let's just double check our other settings and make sure they're set at the best they can be. Actually, we want to make a slightly higher contrast, so let's decrease the size of the corona a little bit and go back to our light and then increase the light intensity and adjust the balance. In these options, what you have to do is just keep looking at your thumbnail, change things, wait for it to render in the thumbnail, look at it, and change other things. We could add some more mountains here, but I think this is actually pretty. Let's just go back into our atmosphere and make sure that we set our global illumination. It's there, so let's go to our render and let's click Final. If you have the time, it would be nice to use the superior or ultra settings, but it will take a lot longer to render. So let's click 800 by 436, click OK. And before we do that, let's go back into the atmosphere editor and go to the sky and haze and increase the quality boost. We're using a lot of clouds and haze, and we don't want them to look pixelated. Let's also go into our light tab and increase the quality boost here as well. And this will increase the time for rendering, but it's necessary if you're using a lot of clouds and haze in your scenes. And here we have our final image. It took about 17 minutes to render, and so obviously you can set your settings to a higher quality, and that will create a nicer look. but this is a very interesting looking composition. Thank you for watching this tutorial by Geek at Play Studios. I'd like to invite you to visit us on the web at www.geekatplay.com.